for being here today. Good crowd to hear about this important issue. My name is Jake Schweitzer. I am the Executive Director of North Star Policy Action. We're a think tank that promotes data-driven solutions to help working Minnesotans thrive. A central focus of our work is addressing climate change in a timely manner that prioritizes the needs of workers. For this reason, we were ecstatic when this legislature committed Minnesota to reaching 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. But while setting that goal was essential, we now need to build the clean energy infrastructure to achieve it. To investigate our capacity to build that infrastructure, North Star undertook an analysis of Minnesota's permitting process for clean energy projects. Our analysis finds that if Minnesota added clean energy generation at the same pace achieved over the last decade, we would not reach 100% clean electricity until the year 2062. To reach our 2040 target for carbon-free electricity, we must double the pace at which we add clean energy resources. Further analysis actually suggests the problem is getting worse. Clean energy projects are now taking longer to get through the permitting process. For example, solar projects started in 2015 took an average of 300 days to receive a permit. By contrast, projects started in 2019 or later took almost twice as long, requiring 549 days to get a permit. Currently, the energy capacity of projects waiting for permits or transmission interconnection in Minnesota is nearly double that of our current clean energy production. Given the urgency of addressing climate change, we cannot afford to keep these projects on hold. In this delay, Minnesota is falling behind our regional neighbors. For example, Iowa and South Dakota both increased their share of electricity from wind and solar sources nearly 4 times more than Minnesota between 2017 and 2022. Taken together, these findings paint a clear picture. Minnesota needs to build clean energy at a substantially faster pace to reach our energy goals. And the legislation that we're here to talk about today gets us on a faster track by removing redundancies, creating more consistent processes, and simplifying public input opportunities. Taking these steps will significantly increase the speed at which clean energy can be built in the state, bringing the efficiency of our clean energy production process into alignment with the ambition of our clean energy goals. So thanks to Senator Frentz, who I'm not sure is here yet, and Majority Leader Long for their leadership on this issue. I also want to thank members of this stakeholder group who spent a lot of time working on the recommendations that led to the legislation, and I know members of that group are here today. But next up, we will hear from House Majority Leader Jamie Long.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good to see everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Senator Frentz is actively presenting this bill in committee right now, so he can't be here. The timing didn't quite work out as we'd planned, but hopefully he'll be able to join us a little later on. So Senator Frentz and I were the lead authors on 100% clean energy by 2040, which we passed last year. And we had a huge coalition behind it, including the folks who were up here who worked really hard to get that bill done. That bill really restored Minnesota's leadership on a national scale on clean energy. We are a top 5 clean energy standard in the nation now, and we have set our trajectory as a state in partnership with our utilities, in partnership with labor, in partnership with clean energy advocates to say this is the direction that we are headed to get to 100% clean energy by 2040. But now the hard work begins. Now we actually have to go out and build all of these that we can, right? And a lot more solar too. And we need to be able to interconnect those to the grid. And the system that we set up to permit these projects, our transmission system, is decades old and was built for a time when you would build a really large power plant and you had a lot of time to connect it, and we are not at that moment. We are at a moment where we have real urgency about the need to get new power, clean power, onto the grid in Minnesota. We have grid congestion at a really extreme level right now in Minnesota, which means that we can't get new projects built, and the projects that are on right now are curtailing, meaning they're not able to get their full power to market. So we're not in a good situation right now, and we have to build an enormous amount of new clean energy between now and 2040 to be able to achieve our clean energy goals. The good news about the effort that we're undertaking right now is it's a group effort. It's a team effort. We all know that this is a challenge. The Public Utilities Commission undertook a process in the fall to bring together a really important working group of stakeholders to try to identify where we could streamline the process. And those recommendations are ones that Senator Frentz and I have used as the basis for our bill that we have introduced together. The House version will be heard next week. And the goal is pretty straightforward, which is that right now it takes 10 years to build a transmission project. If we keep doing business as usual, we are not going to meet our 2040 goals. we can build infrastructure quicker, we can do the permitting process quicker, and we can still have good public input in that process, but in a way that's clear to the public about where they should get involved, that's clear to the public, that there aren't duplicative steps and misleading or confusing steps in the process. So we can do all that together. I think that the work that went into the stakeholder group shows us a path forward to achieve that. And so with the bill today, this will be our 100% bill 2.0, where we're really taking on the challenge that we set out for ourselves last year and getting into the implementation phase where we know this is the path that we need to be able to achieve it. So thank you all for being here.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Arnold. I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Commerce. And I just want to take a moment to maybe focus on the human version of a lot of really exciting, big, cool stuff that you'll drive by and be able to see. But, you know, when we're building out our clean energy future, my kids always remind me that that's important. And it's my 8-year-old's birthday today, now 8-year-old, so this will be for him. But, you know, what we're thinking about is making sure that when you turn your lights on, your lights come on, that you have a safe, healthy, warm home in the winter, it's cool in the summer, and that your energy is reliable, safe, affordable, and clean. And those are things that I think we can all are working toward. What that means in this context is that we are working toward a system that is invisible to a lot of people, but shows up in the power that you get every day, that's 100% carbon-free by 2040, and that we have a really effective process to do that. So that means smoother building out of transmission, continued expeditious permitting of storage and clean energy, that's paramount, and at the end of the day, you're flipping on the light and it's clean energy, and you know that it's clean. So we're really excited to be part of the process. I really like the team acknowledgement. There are a lot of folks who need to weigh in and need to have a part and a say in the process, and I think this is a really exciting moment to be in Minnesota, and really happy to be part of this team.
Good afternoon. I'm Bethany Owen. I'm the CEO of Elite, the parent company of Minnesota Power and New Energy Equity based in Minnesota. First, I want to thank Senator Friends and Majority Leader Long for their leadership in bringing forward this much-needed permitting reform bill. I also want to thank, I know she wasn't able to be here today, but Minnesota Public Utilities Commissioner Chair Katie Sieben for her and the Commission's leadership in bringing together a diverse set of stakeholders to come forward with recommendations that form the basis of this proposed legislation, all with former Commissioner Lipschultz's great facilitation. At Elite and Minnesota Power, we believe we have the responsibility to achieve 100% by 2040 in all the right ways, reliably, affordably, and without leaving anyone behind. That means strengthening our communities that we serve, lifting others up as we move forward, and we take that responsibility incredibly seriously. Local and regional labor, as well as meaningful investments in our communities, will all be a part of what when we at Elite talk about a truly sustainable clean energy transformation. And for that, we're so grateful for our strong and long-standing partnership with the union trades. 100% by 2040 is a requirement for Minnesota electric utilities in particular, but as I like to say, with big and important things, we have to work together. We are so much stronger when we're working together. So utilities, advocates, developers, legislators, regulators, labor leaders, community leaders, all of us are going to need to continue to work closely together to help ensure our state meets our clean energy goals in the very best way possible for Minnesotans. Minnesota Power is making significant investments in the transmission and renewable energy infrastructure that's needed to support reliability in our region as we continue to build the clean energy future. And this legislation is exactly the kind of approach that will help Minnesota meet its carbon-free energy goals while eliminating the cost to customers that delays can bring. Again, I'm grateful for the leadership of everyone here today to help bring this legislation forward, and I'd encourage us to apply the excellent model of this solutions-oriented process to the critical permitting reforms that we need in northern Minnesota and elsewhere in this great state of Minnesota. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate O'Hare, and I am Senior Vice President of U.S. Onshore Development for EDF Renewables, and I'm proud to be based right here in Minnesota. I'll tell you, my journey in renewables began in 2002 with a permit application to the state for one of our very first wind projects here in Minnesota, and many more have followed, and I'm just thrilled to be here to talk about continuing to improve this process overall. The Minnesota Energy Infrastructure Permitting Act will streamline the permitting process, will enhance public participation, will provide a more transparent environmental review process, and cut the governmental red tape. EDF Renewables actively participated in the PUC's permitting reform stakeholder process late last year, and I too applaud the leadership of both the legislation and the PUC chair, Sieben, for identifying that permitting procedures can hold back clean energy development. If enacted, this legislation will be the first time in nearly 50 years that the state embarked on a comprehensive update of energy facility permitting laws to accommodate today's energy economy. And bringing together stakeholders, streamlining the process, will really bring our focus back to invigorating Minnesota's clean energy environment.
So I think with that, we're opening up questions. But
is almost here.
okay, great. So ask your questions really slowly. I also wanted to just acknowledge Commissioner Peterson and thank him for being here as well. Happy to take any questions folks have.
Somebody give an example that might make sense to somebody at home who doesn't understand permitting process of what is the kind of log jam right now that this proposal might clear up or accelerate?
Kevin Pranis, Atlanta, Minnesota, North Dakota, represents 14,000 construction laborers who work on these projects alongside other crafts, and I'm sure that Kate O'Hare from EDF, also as a developer, can speak to that. I mean, but I'll just say that our membership, we've probably attended 50 different permitting proceedings over the last 10 years because our members don't work until those permits are in hand. And so we've got to know a lot of them, and it's a whole range of log jams. There's delays in each process. Just accepting the application takes a month longer than it really needs to under the current sort of system. We have a system where, as EDF knows, there's a requirement to study transmission lines that no one wants to build, and those result in a lot of anger in communities because they see a line on a map over their house and they think that someone's going to build a transmission line there, and in fact, no one intends to build a transmission line there. It's not a good place for one. The developer doesn't want it. No one wants it. But those residents are told it's a real possibility, right? And those are the sort of unnecessary steps. They cost money. They actually discourage public participation and trust in the process. And those are the kind of things that are eliminated in this reform. So there's a very detailed, at each step, we're eliminating, we're sort of tightening up some places, we're clarifying public input. So I would say a lot of work with some very smart lawyers who've done this to try to look at each step and fix it. But I mean, I'm sure you can speak to many examples.
Sure, thank you. EDF and developers like EDF do an extensive amount of evaluation, studies, and research on our project sites throughout the development process that goes into the permit application itself and is then submitted for review, a public comment, and all of those different pieces, which we believe is firmly an important part of the overall permitting process. However, as we go through that evaluation, as we set up hearings, as we are looking through really from a compliance perspective how those pieces come together, it often takes longer, as Kevin identified, than it needs to review and make sure that those pieces uphold the framework that Minnesota is looking for, and streamlining those pieces, encouraging public comment where it's appropriate, and bringing those pieces together to issue the site permit for projects that are in compliance is really where we're focused on being able to commit to the projects, commit to the communities, create jobs with those projects that are ultimately going to be constructed, and bring some focus to the public input, but streamlining the process to shorten up that time frame.
How do you balance the idea that going carbon-free will help the environment? The permitting process is to protect the environment. How do you balance making sure you don't eliminate too many steps so that you have issues with the environment?
You only missed one question, so you're right on time.
We're ready to start the press conference now. I want to thank you all for coming. Senator Nick Frentz, North Mankato. I missed the question. Go ahead,
I'll
Representative.
take a first crack and you can follow up. So I don't think there is any conflict really. We aren't impacting the environmental reviews that are being conducted on these projects. The phases of the project that we're looking at are things like how many, as Kevin gave the example, how many lines you should be proposing to be drawn, at whether you're going to a contested case hearing, for example, whether you have a certificate of need. These are more on the technical side than they are on the environmental review side, so I don't believe there's any real conflict. Anything you wanted to add?
I still didn't hear the question.
Environmental review conflict at all with the bill that we're proposing?
No, I think the bill protects our right to have a decent environmental review. It's more a matter of streamlining and helping the agencies come together, and also earlier, to make the environmental review process just as strong. That's why I came to the press conference, to tell you that.
And to make sure they don't duplicate, that they're not doing the same thing that delays it, is that a big problem?
Yeah, I mean, in the public input process, there are a number of, in the current structure of the Public Utilities Commission, sometimes there will be multiple times when the public can plug in, and it can be a little confusing when the public should engage. So we're trying to make it very clear, here's the project, here's the proposed line, here's your opportunity for engagement, rather than having, multiple opportunities along the way that can confuse the public.
So in terms of right-of-way acquisition and construction of these projects, that's being done not by government agencies, that's being done by the utilities and the energy companies, correct?
There's a permitting process, which the Public Utilities Commission is a part of, so the spirit and letter of it's not really changing. There's still right-of-way rules. We have some questions about public access right-of-way, utilities. What's going to change is the timing of the involvement of the entities, including the agencies, and some of the timelines that we hope will reflect some speeding up. You probably mentioned hoping to shave as much as a year off the permitting for these projects. And I don't know if you mentioned this, serve as a template for other permitting reform that we're hoping to do for the state of Minnesota outside energy transmission and generation. And maybe this can be an example of how things can work.
I don't know, Bethany, if you wanted to speak to the process from the utility standpoint.
Well, yes, and so specifically transmission, so I appreciated the question and the comment. 9 to 12 months doesn't seem like a long time, but it's a very significant when you think of 10 years, and we don't have 10 years for this transition. And so anything that can be done in any process to preserve kind of the environmental review, the stakeholder engagement, but also be able to move these projects forward as expeditiously as possible is incredibly helpful, and it saves money for customers as well. The unnecessary delays add expense to these projects that we don't need as well.
Does it have to be clean energy? So if I'm building a pipeline or a gas plant, I get to suck it and take the old slow system?
It does not
It does not what?
have to be clean energy. I mean, this is energy. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about transmission construction, but obviously we have the 100% clean energy standard that we passed last year, so that's still in effect.
The need for the transmission lines is because as you're building more wind arrays and solar arrays, those need better connection to the grid, is that it? Is that what's it?
I think we expect a doubling of the demand for electricity in Minnesota in the next 20 years. And so it's all our forms of energy. And Representative Long mentioned the 100% clean energy bill by 2040. That bill is specifically designed so that different clean energy technologies can compete with each other. So we don't have a specific mix for wind or for solar. We know that we'll be to 100% by 2040. I'd like to see Minnesota be the first state in the country to achieve that. But the transmission is for all those energy technologies, and looking forward to finding out how they develop and how they compete, including reliability and price.
And if you look at where new renewable energy is getting built right now, it's where we see retirements. So it's where you have existing capacity in the transmission system, like the Sherco coal plants. Your largest solar installation in the Midwest is being built there. But we don't have new places to interconnect right now with utility scale on the grid. So we have to be able to build out more transmission. And this is a really important time because MISO, which is our grid operator for the region, has proposed the largest new construction process in the country for new transmission in this region. So right now is when a lot of these processes are moving through the Public Utilities Commission process, and we want to get ahead of that to try to get this transmission online as quick as we can.
Quick shameless plug for the guy who came late. Representative Long mentioned the Sherco solar installation, the news on the cost of that solar energy, a little bit better than people thought it would be. And so one of the things we're telling Minnesotans is that in that competition for 100%, cost will be one of the factors. Right now, we're getting unsubsidized wind for about $37 a megawatt hour. That's good news for the planet and for ratepayers.
In your hearing today, I did get to attend because I was doing other things.
I was just there.
Did the opposition bring up base load from nuclear, like building new nuclear, removing the moratorium?
Well, first of all, I think we have some bipartisan conversations in the Senate Energy Committee. You may have seen we passed the advanced nuclear study, not only bipartisanly, but with unanimous support. They did mention base load today. I think that's part of the conversation. However, with some of the advances in battery storage, I think Minnesotans are more and more comfortable with intermittent sources like wind and solar. I guess we'll see how it plays out. The bill passed on a voice vote, and now it's off to the Environment Committee, and I'm optimistic that we'll match it up with our friends in the House and get it passed this year. They did mention it, yes.
Can you say that again to the microphone? Just kidding.
Can you walk through the differences between the two bills, the House and the Senate?
They're the same right now. Our hearing's
Not
next
quite
week.
the same.
Are they not?
We
Did you
put
amend
on a
it today?
couple
Okay.
technical amendments. I assure the House nothing that they would ever be concerned about. Actually, truly technical amendments, probably 5 went on. There's some language related to the northern Minnesota transmission line that we approved to help protect some of the federal money. There's a technical amendment, a couple others I'll tell you about. And, you know, to the extent the two bills come off the two floors differently, I'm sure we can work them out in conference.
Yeah, we're working on an amendment for the hearing next week in the House, but I think the core proposals are really the same. It's taking from the Public Utilities Commission Working Group that consensus document for how we can improve this, which I think is, you know, why you see regulators, folks who are at the Public Utilities Commission, environmental advocates all here together. This is a pretty unique collaboration and I think a real team effort.
Yeah, thank you for saying that too, because one of the things that you'll see in the draft, the original draft that came out of both House and Senate, is only those provisions which the two authors thought were the most consensus. So I believe they had 34 proposals. We're really looking at 14 or 15 to start with, and we'll see how the journey goes. By the way, the Senate Energy Committee is still meeting right now if you want to run over there. I took a hiatus.
All right.
Majority Leader Long, may I ask you an off-topic question?
Sure.
About the constitutional amendment that's being heard at 6 p.m. on the
Yeah.
Independent Commission. Can you explain a little bit about why you think it's important, and also expand on the striking the 120 legislative days? Is it your intention that the legislature is full-time, or is it to allow a buffer if a budget process takes a long
Sure.
time?
Could we chat after so I don't have to make all the folks stand up here
Sure,
to answer the
sure.
question?
I'm sure other people might want it if you can stay up there, but if
Sure,
everybody
I'm
else
happy
needs
to
to
stay
leave.
up, but I'll
Okay.
take down the wind turbine and we can talk about other topics.
Okay.
Any other questions on the energy bill? All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. I've used them.